Okay.
Thank you. Okay, good morning, everyone. I'm John Vittner. I am the OPM Secretary's designee for today's meeting, and I'd like to call to order the November 2nd, 2021 meeting of the Information Technology Strategy and Investment Committee. It's now 10:02. Josh, would you like to address the group today before we begin?
Just very briefly, because I know we have a very full agenda, I just want to thank the committee for all of their work over the first 3 years almost now of the Lamont administration. I think if you follow the press, the number of successful deployments and new projects and capabilities that have come online are continuing to generate a lot of buzz, a lot of headlines, and most importantly, a lot of positive reviews from our constituents in terms of new services and capabilities that we're launching. So this is where that all begins in this meeting. And so I really appreciate everybody's support and leadership here. And I think we should just dive right in because I know we have a very full agenda.
Couldn't have said that any better, Josh. Very full agenda today. All right, so the first order of business is the acceptance of the minutes from July 6, 2021. Can I get a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second, Mark.
All right, second. Any discussion? Committee members, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, minutes are approved. Next order of business is item number 3 on the agenda from the Office of Higher Education. It's the Financial Aid Processing Software System. And I believe we have Executive Director Tim Larson with us and his team. If you'd like to introduce your team.
Will do. Thanks, John. Appreciate everyone's appreciation of our situation here in the Office of Higher Education. Been working on this for several years. On the call today, we have Ron Abastaria, who's the director in our financial aid division, Mark French, who actually works the Roberta Willis and other scholarship opportunities for the agency, and Jeff Ziplo, who is an outside contractor with Clifton Larson and Allen. To walk through, we prepared a very brief 6-page slide presentation to highlight the security issues, the current state, future state, and then ultimately the costs of this. So I can go ahead. Okay, so,
Yes,
I came into office with the governor in 2019. It was brought to my attention that there had been a pretty significant IT deficit regarding the Roberta Willis Scholarship Program. We quickly developed a statement of work. At the time, it was Bloom Shapiro. We had them sort of review some of the office procedures and then looking specifically at the Roberta Willis, in as much as we were continuing to hire outside contractors to continue to Band-Aid the operation going forward. We quickly moved our office from the 5th floor to the 7th floor, and it came to my attention that in order to operate the Roberta Willis Scholarship Program, we needed to have a fax machine in our office, as we were getting pretty sensitive FAFSA information over a fax line, and we were able to convert that with a computer system on the 5th floor and back up to where we are on the 7th floor. So I have a quick slide presentation, but as you've read, the Roberta Willis Scholarship Program has been storing extremely confidential and protective information on an insecure Microsoft Access database used to process financial aid monies to college students. This includes free application for federal student aid and student information, family education rights, and Privacy Act compliance. We did have in our original presentation a year and a half ago other software systems that are still running on a non-integrated access database, but for cost considerations, I was asked by Secretary McCaw to trim this back. So we're focusing specifically today on the Roberta Willis function, as it is the state's largest scholarship program, which effectively disperses $33 million to Connecticut students going to Connecticut colleges. My largest fears and what has kept me up at night is the integrity and the security of this system. So I will just turn it over to Mark French, and Mark can walk you through the next slide. Mark works with this system with Lynn Goodwin on a daily basis, along with some help from a consultant. We're now using CLA as the consultant to continue to Band-Aid so that we can operate this. And I will say, and I'm extremely pleased of our staff, that even during COVID, with this system, we were able to actually deliver the Roberta Willis Scholarship Program out to needy students this year. So Mark, if you could just briefly take some folks through this and maybe give them some of you're the hands-on guy, you can give them some of your concerns here.
Sure. Thank you, Tim. The current state issues start with security issues, a concern of student-sensitive information, that it's not as secure as it should be. As Tim mentioned, we get in the free application for federal student aid, or FAFSA, which is the primary financial aid application that all students fill out when they're seeking financial aid to go to college. And that form includes personally identifiable information, as well as certain IRS tax information. Also, we are using an antiquated system. Was custom developed system with little or no documentation capability. It is based on old versions of the Microsoft Access database, and that's what we use to manage transactions and all the processes for the Roberta Willis Scholarship Program. The system has been slowly failing over the past at least 4 to 5 years. Downloading the FAFSA data from the federal government can take hours. That ties up my associate Lynn Goodwin's computer. She is the primary processor of the Roberta Willis Scholarship, and it can tie up her computer for quite a long time just to get the FAFSA data in. The system has been consistently failing on a daily to weekly basis. This requires us to contact our external consultant to research and remedy the various situations come up. But again, as Tim has pointed out, these are Band-Aid fixes. These are one-off fixes. These are not redesigns of the system or reprogramming. And then we lack on-site IT support, which impacts the maintenance of the systems. We no longer have the IT person who actually programmed these databases, these access databases. She retired. So the coding and all was what she had put together. So it makes it more difficult for us to work with the system without her knowledge. We have difficulty to enhance the systems with new features and functions. Some of this is lack of documentation. This would affect our ability to revise or add new financial aid programs if the legislature should so decide to do in the future. And finally, we have concerns exist with the system limitations that they may create false or inappropriate awards. The system lacks the checks and balances to ensure awards are correct. So this is also a concern of ours each year that we make awards.
Thanks, Mark. Let's move on to Jeff. Jeff, maybe you can walk us through the steps we took to improve the system, how we've used the bid process, and how we've managed coming to this award. Jeff?
Thank you very much, Tim. So we were engaged, CLA was engaged to take a look at the current system and overall operations. The slide that you see in front of you, we had a 3-phase program. One is to take a look at the processes, develop a proposal for outside vendors to respond. And then phase 3 has not been implemented, obviously, which is the actual implementation. If you go to the next slide, the activities that were part of our project was we actually reviewed the current state processes as well as created future state processes. Where did we want to be? We'll get into a little bit of those future state characteristics in a bit. We did develop a statement of work to take advantage of a state contract that allowed us to work with or identify a couple of vendors that were cloud-based. We developed a statement of work, sent it out to a number of vendors. We evaluated the vendors' responses, but the most important thing we did was we developed test drive scenarios. So we provided these vendors what we needed to complete as part of this project. So we gave them what those future state processes needed to do. We told them how the system needed to work for us to be more successful with the folks that are applying to the Roberta Willis program. And then ultimately, we did this as a team. We evaluated the two vendors, which we went through these test drives with, and really looked at it from a 17-point perspective. And as you can see, although you can't see all the clear details, there was really a very clear winner, which was Nelnet. Nelnet was a system that we reviewed in quite a bit of detail. The test drives took place over a full day per vendor, and we got a lot of really good information on that vendor, and thus we selected Nelnet. On the next slide, what the Nelnet application is going to provide us with is, first and foremost, it will significantly enhance the security and accuracy of all information, including student FAFSA information that Office of Higher Education receives. It's going to provide a very different user experience. Students and schools, for that matter, will be able to go online and access and provide their information and apply online, which is not the case now. Now that we're with the Nelnet system, we'll be able to gather a lot of information and do a lot more statistical analysis so that we can look at and see where and what students are applying to from the different Connecticut colleges, different Connecticut programs. And lastly, implementing the Nelnet solution, it really is going to allow us to expand not only the support of the application, but as this program changes or needs to change or grows, if it needs to grow, we have a partner that will help us enhance the application as we see fit. On the next slide, just what that future state looks like. Clearly, improved security. I think we've probably said that 5 to 10 times already, but security is of utmost importance, and we want to make sure that the data is secure and will be encrypted both at rest and in motion, and this solution provides that capability. It changes the user experience, as I mentioned, excuse me, and people will have online access. It is a cloud-based solution, so it is not only secure, but it is going to allow the users online access, students online access to promote and provide good information. Data collection process is important, but also it helps to meet some of the governor's FAFSA challenge. The governor had implemented a FAFSA challenge, and now we're going to have some really good information from a FAFSA perspective, and we can do, again, some good analysis with all that information. And so that's why we're really looking forward to implementing the Nelnet solution.
And then lastly, we have Ram Avastaria to talk about the IT capital cost in a summary. And then we'll be available to answer questions. Ram?
Next slide, Ram. There we go.
You're on mute, Ram.
Thank you very much. Yeah, my screen froze for a second. So yeah, it's a very straightforward budget. We have an initial investment cost of $865,000. Then moving forward for fiscal year 22 and 23 and 24, it'll be annually $305,000. And moving forward for fiscal year 25, $317,000. And lastly, for fiscal year 2026, $325,000. And I just wanted to thank Tim, Jeff and Mark. They've done yeoman's work, on putting all this together.
That basically concludes our presentation. We can be available for comment. Again, I would just say that the integrity of this software currently is very taxing. I'm very concerned about any type of hacking and getting into individuals' personal financial information. For those of us who've had children and have gone through this arduous task of filling out this FAFSA form, there's a significant amount of data, et cetera, on there. And so, that's the forefront of this. Mark and his team are able to work with it, but it gets very arduous daily, frankly, when we're trying to do this. In addition to managing a handful of other scholarship type activities through the office. So that will conclude our proposal and our project, but we'll be here for questions if you have any.
Thank you, Tim, and the rest of your team. That was a great summary of the project. I know you've worked on this with us for quite some time now. So is there anyone from the committee that would like to ask any questions of the team? Okay.
If you do need any of this stuff in the background, please let us know. We can provide it to you on a fingertip. And again, we appreciate your taking some time to hear this proposal today.
Thanks again, Tim.
One question, John.
Sure, Kim.
Who is going to fulfill your IT director role, or are you filling that position in your under search?
As it stands right now, we have just completed interviews yesterday. We have a short list of individuals that we'll, I guess, bring in for a second interview. So we should have that filled, I would say, by the end of the week. We did work closely with DAS and IT support. In fact, I believe they were on the interview. Ram, you may want to quickly comment on that.
Yeah, we've worked with DAS Bits, and they were part of the process right from the get-go. And we have a finalized meeting today, and we'll be meeting with Executive Larson later on this week to make the final pick.
Very good.
Thank you. Mark, I thought you may have been trying to say something earlier.
No, I just wanted to reemphasize the need for improving our protections of this data. I mean, the current systems that this is running on is not something that we really are comfortable with in any way, shape, or form. So I know we've done some work to shore that up in the short term, but it's not a long-term solution. So I'm very supportive of trying to move this forward.
All right, hearing no further comments, can I get a motion to approve?
So moved. It's Kim.
Can I get a second?
It's Mark. I'll
Second, it's Beth.
Thank you, Mark. All in favor? I get an aye.
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 Any opposed? All right, motion passes. Thank you, Tim.
Thank you very much. Appreciate all of your support. Let me know what next steps are and what we need to do to move this forward. Thank you guys so much. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, the next order of business is item number 4 on the agenda is from the Department of Energy and Environmental Protection, the Document Repository Automation Phase 2. And I believe we have a few folks from DEEP on the call. Dave Madden, who is the project manager, will be talking to us today about this project. If you'd like to introduce the rest of your team, Dave.
Yes, of course. Good morning. Can you all hear me?
Yes, we can.
Excellent, thank you. So yes, my name is David Matson. I'm a project manager, an IT project manager in the Office of Information Management. On our team this morning, we have Julie Wilson. She's our Assistant Financial Chief. We also have Lou Fazzino. He's an IT manager in OIM. We have Irene Garcia, who's the IT manager, another IT manager in OIM, and Andrew DeBarge, who happens to be my supervisor. So today we would like to talk to you a little bit about our records management initiatives here at the agency. Sorry, you need to advance the slide here. There we go. Okay. So we knew several years ago that we're managing our paper records is not going to work in the 21st century. So we started the initiative to first organize the records, figure out a way to digitize them, and then provide them online. So this slide just kind of represents where our past state was. This is where we started. The slide on the left is our current record center down below and in our basement here in Hartford. And we also have quite a bit of off-site storage in warehouses to store paper records. So this is very cumbersome. The only way that the public or our staff could get to these records were either to come into the building itself, make appointments, and then request to get these records by paper. Some of these requests can be quite large, and it require the general public to sit in our library and thumb through all of these papers to try to get the information that they need. And some of this information is extremely critical for financial transactions, health issues. So there's a lot to be said for the need from the public, the general public, to access these records. Some may say a little bit more for our agency than others, right? So this is where we want to go. This is what we're trying to do. We're leveraging the tools that are provided to us by BEST to start scanning, digitizing, indexing, and providing our records online. So this is our ultimate goal. And the last bullet point there is the benefit to the state is not only the benefit to its general public and the employees of our agency, but it also significantly reduces the agency footprint that we're currently dedicating and paying money just to rent to store our paper records. The end goal here is to get the records digitized, get them in our electronic repository, and then get them disposed of. So we no longer have to carry this kind of storage. So we knew this project was large. We had over 8 million records, paper records that we estimated supporting our business. So we broke it down into phases. So I'm just going to quickly go over what we accomplished with phase 1. So we completed indexing and digitizing 1.3 million paper records. And we also created an online public portal so that the general public and our staff from the outside of the agency can search for those records and attain them instantly, rather than setting up appointments and traveling to the agency. So that we also had an additional set of records that were in other repositories, like our SIMS enterprise system, that are not available to the public. And we were trying to create ways for them to the public to come into the record center and use a computer terminal to try to also access those records, which was not very efficient. So we're adding those records together. So altogether, we now provide over 2 million records to the public, but that's just from phase 1. So we want to continue the lessons learned from that project to continue to digitize the rest of the records. So one of the other things that we also noticed is that our FOIA requests have dropped significantly. For the sections that we've digitized and provided online, those sections get very little, if zero, FOIA requests now. And for the FOIA requests they do get, the staff time to process them is almost negligible, because all they do is refer the public to the portal. Usually those FOIAs will come in simply because the public wasn't aware that they were available online. So it significantly reduces staff time and cost in that area. As I said, we want to leverage the lessons learned from the first part of this project. We've made some great strides with the current vendor that we have, and I'll talk a little bit more about that later. And we certainly want to utilize the platform supported to us by BEST, primarily FileNet, which is our document repository. And so that's worked out very, very well, and they've been a great partner for us. So what are our goals? So for the phase 2, we have estimated 6.9 million records, paper records remaining. We know we can't do that all in this request. So we kind of figured out what we could get done in the next 18 months. That calculated out to be 4 million additional paper records that we'd like to get digitized and get those also provided online. Now, primarily that group that the records represent is for our remediation group. And that group is probably one of the highest in demand from our public records center perspective. People need those records when they're doing any kind of real estate transactions, particularly anything related to business, right? So if there's, if you want to buy, say, an old dry cleaner or a gas station or something that might do some manufacturing, there's some environmental risk potential there. So most people will do a phase one, which is a study to see what might have transpired or what might have been released on that piece of property. Now, for the phase one, we digitized the hazardous waste manifests, which are also critical for that search, and our spills records, which indicate how many, if there were any releases reported on the property. The remediation documents is the last piece to that. That's the piece where, okay, so a spill has been reported, but hasn't been cleaned up, because that truly affects the liability of the person who owns the property or who will be purchasing the property. So these are just examples of how there's synergy here, and how by providing these records, and we're kind of going in an order here that makes sense, that provides the most benefit. For benefit, and then as we get down to the remaining few, say the next phase, 2 million records, it'll be less critical. But these, we really wanted to hit the ones that are in highest public demand. So we also are, I mentioned that we have some systems that are, they're enterprise databases that also have records that are not available currently through the portal. So part of this phase, we want to improve that and to incorporate those. And so what we need to do that is we need a search function that can search cross repository, not just look in FileNet, but can look into other enterprise databases and then expose those to the public as well. So that's a big piece of this initiative in phase 2 as well. Right, and so by doing that, we estimate that we'll expand without any further digitization or scanning. By doing just that piece I just mentioned, we will be exposing another 270,000 records to the public. Those records represent things like enforcement actions, permits, things of that nature of the agency business. So what other goals we want to do? Certainly we want to reduce travel by the public to the agency, right? There's a carbon footprint piece to that that's important to our agency and the state and our climate as a whole. It also, honestly, with COVID and the pandemic, this became quite critical. As you know, state office buildings closed. It also, but business, outside didn't. People were still buying properties. They still needed our records, and it made it extremely difficult for the public to be able to access those important records in order to make decisions that they needed to do. As the pandemic started to ease up, we did open up a record center by appointment only. Obviously, because of restrictions, it was time consuming for someone to get in to get our records. So that's a burden. And we got some really positive feedback from the public for the records that were available currently through the portal based on phase 1's efforts. So we know that this is extremely critical to the public. It's also extremely critical to internal staff, because sometimes when you're doing a cleanup of a site, there's work that's shared between different parts of the agency. And in years past, when we were dealing with just paper, we would require a consultant to submit 4 copies of a report. And those reports can be quite large. They can measure in feet as far as height. So now all we do is, when these type of reports, once they're digitized and the program's set to handle them, they just go into our repository and they can be shared electronically between different sections of the agency. And that also became extremely important for our day forward solution, which I'll mention when I get to it in the slide. Staff getting to the records immediately, rather than making appointments during COVID to actually have to come in, pick up the records that we placed in the garage based by appointment. And then they had to also do, back in the early stages of the pandemic, we didn't really know what direct contact meant. So staff were taking a risk of actually taking records that were submitted to us through the mail, taking them to their homes, and then processing them. So there was, having this electronic mitigates all of that. And so going forward with the pandemic, we don't really know where that's going to go. So it only adds benefit to that. And honestly, the demand for us to get this project done. So we also want to, with the scanning of the additional 4 million records, we anticipate we'll also reduce the FOIA requests by an additional 1,200. The same thing, we're going to have less FOIA requests, and any FOIA requests we get will be processed quickly by simply directing the public to the public portal, and they can self-serve. What's also nice about the digital records is, when the public has to come in and look at a paper record, as I said, they could be quite large, and they have to thumb through them. the electronic records they can download directly to their computers, and they're word searchable. So it saves the public an enormous amount of time and usability. Securing the agency records. I heard in the last presentation, security was brought up a lot. This is an important point, because when the public come to review our paper records, as I mentioned, they sit on tables in a kind of a library setting. They're relatively unsupervised, and some of the records, as I mentioned, could be in different parts of the agency. So if someone is going through and pulling records that they want to photocopy out of large folders from different parts of the agency, sometimes they don't just put them back in the folders where they're supposed to be. So these records get misfiled, and then they're very difficult to locate because they're in paper form. So that's one way we lose records. Another way is it can be, I'll be nice and say unintentional, but we have seen where it is intentional, where people will actually remove records. And those paper records are our only copy. So in cases where there's a legal matter, pending, and an important record might be critical for a hearing, and it can disappear. So by doing things electronically and providing it online, they can download the document all they want, but they can't touch our records. So it really enhances our security of our records. And some of these records, in working with the state library, are permanent. I mean, they can be land records. They can be instances where there's been a serious release that causes a health issue. So these are really important to the public. And I also want to touch on the transparency. Clearly, having things on digitally and online creates a lot of transparency. As I mentioned, it works for our internal work staff as far as sharing records in between, also getting them at home with the pandemic, but also sharing our records with other government agencies, such as the EPA, Department of Public Health, where we might have sample results that the public health might need. And they can go after phase 2, they'll be able to get those digital records online. All those sample results, maybe if they're looking at a cancer cluster in a neighborhood, they'll be able to get those records online rather than trying to set up and coordinate with our agency. Okay, I'm just checking my time here. So what have we already done? So we did do lean events. We don't do anything, any automation or any kind of computer solutions for a part of our agency if they haven't leaned out their work process. We don't want to automate waste. So all of the programs that we've done to date and the remediation have been leaned out. Their process has been leaned out. The foundation components, such as ECM, that's all been set up, and including the taxonomy. And I could talk at length about the taxonomy. We've spent probably 3 years. It was a combination effort between technical staff and OAM and our business side, and to hammer out a taxonomy that will generically meet the needs of an agency that has a very diverse responsibility. Anything from tracking bears to smokestacks to water contamination to spills, on a highway. So we've worked very hard on that, and it's served us very well, and it's served us very well going forward in this project. Now, this is also an important point. The statement of work was published. We received it, we reviewed it, and we picked the vendor. The vendor, fortunately, in my opinion, the vendor that did come in with the lowest bid and was selected is the vendor that did the first two sections of the agency. They did the manifest and they did the spills. The reason why that is important is because I know from personal experience, it takes quite a bit of time to try to get the vendors up to speed with your business and work out kind of because there's a workflow on our side to get the records prepped, and there's a workflow on their side to process the records, to scan them, index them, and get them to us so we can ingest them. And that has been hired out. I kind of use the analogy, we paved the road. So it's smooth sailing. I've already had communications with the vendor on this project, and they know they're ready to go. As soon as you approve the funding, we can start this project literally within weeks. We can get the vendor in here, go over what we've already worked out from staff as far as how they want to set up the records, how they want them indexed, and then convey that through our business requirements document, get the vendor up to speed, and hopefully within a few months we'll be actually scanning. And I just want to point out that when we get the files from them, we do this in batches, right, of like 2,000-3,000 at a time. We'll ingest 15 batches overnight, and those records are available to the public that day. So there's no more lag time on that. And also important, and I want to talk about this quickly, the day forward solution. We certainly don't want to scan records for an agency section that continues to receive paper records, right? We don't want to have to come back to you guys in a year and say, oh, we got more. So it's important to us to include a section, if they're going to go through this process, that they have a day forward solution. And what I mean by that is any records that they get in from today forward, they can go, it goes into FileNet. For a manifest, that wasn't that big of a risk because those records going forward are going to be handled by EPA. We had to digitize the millions of them that were in the backlog. For spills and remediation, which is going next, we used a data cap software solution, worked with a vendor. So it's set up so that the as they get a record, if they receive it by the mail, they'll scan it and drop it into what we call an ingestion folder, an electronic folder. If it's received by an FTP site or an email, that's dropped into the same folder. DataCap looks at that folder every minute. If it sees a record, it ingests it and indexes it correctly, and it's immediately available to the public, and it's immediately available to staff who might be working remotely. So that's important because so spills, who we just finished up all of their scanning, wrapping up phase 1 this past summer, and remediation going into phase 2, all of their records that they're receiving today are going into FileNet today. So that's an important point for this. And certainly the business IT resources, we're already aligned, as I mentioned, with everything and the lessons learned and what we've kind of ironed out in phase 1, we're ready to go. So I just kind of want to point that out. Okay, so this slide is a summary. I'm getting very close to the 15 minutes, and I know we're busy, so I'm certainly not going to read it all. I wanted to provide this as something for your folks to read while we can go over any questions that you may have. Oh, also, I want to mention the cost. We didn't get that in the slide. We're looking at a capital funding request of $4 million. I believe we're looking at an estimated development cost of $5.2 million. But Julie might be able to add more details if you have any more questions on that.
Julie, any further comments or feedback on the financials?
No, he's correct about that. If you want to know where they're coming from, we've got about $600,000 that'll be coming from appropriated funds, and about $600,000 that's going to be coming from some of our restricted and federal funds to kind of, match the capital IT bond funds. So in total, we're putting in about $1.2 million of our own money.
From the committee, any comments, questions, feedback?
I am real happy to hear that you thought about this going forward so that this, bleed won't continue, and that this way the current records are automated and we're just taking care of the backlog that most people would forget about, and the business process has changed. So that is really great news.
Thank you.
John, one quick question and one comment. I love the continued use of our enterprise resources, making more of our data available and shareable and supportable across the state. That's the comment. The question is on the reduction of the anticipated reduction of 1,200 FOI requests over a year. What's the base on that? Like, how many do normally come in on an annual basis?
We were estimating, depending on the section, right? So for Manifest was our first go, and they were averaging around 600 FOIAs a year for their records. And as the public became, please keep in mind that a lot of the FOIA requests are frequent flyers. We'll have licensed environmental professionals that are familiar with doing business with the agency, and so they'll because they're doing phase 1s or phase 2s, as I referenced, they'll frequently be hitting our records to try to do those reports. So as they got more familiar with realizing that these documents are online and it's an accurate and easy to find way to get to them, the FOIAs drop pretty quickly. But there are some people that either aren't aware of it or they have a question on something, they will submit a FOIA. And as I said, the time to respond to those, I talked to the manager of that section yesterday, and he said it took about an hour per FOIA just to get, because it's a single document type of request, and it reduced it to almost minutes. He would just respond with an email saying, it's on portal, please go there first. So that's I hope that answers your question. So in spills, it was kind of a similar number. And then we're anticipating something similar with remediation, because often these groups will be hit at the same time, different FOIAs at the same time for, different records for similar research.
My question was just what's the total number of FOIs that come in? And maybe you don't have that per the agency. I'm just trying to understand how much we're cutting off or expecting to move. 5%, 2%, that kind of thing.
I think it's probably going to be closer to, well, as we get through remediation, right, through the additional 4 million, that represents mostly like 80% of our records in the agency. So I think it's going to be closer to 60 to 70%.
Okay, thank you.
There are no other questions or feedback. Can I get a motion to approve?
This is Mark, so moved.
Thank you, Mark. Second?
I'll do the second. It's Kim.
Thank you, Kim. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Okay, vote passes. Thank you.
Thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you.
Okay,
Thank you.
next, thank you. The next order of business is item number 5 on our agenda is from the Department of Administrative Services, Public Records Management Software. And I believe we have Eleanor Michael, Policy and Legislative Advisor at DIS, has joined us to present that project. And if we can just take that other document off the screen, that would be helpful. Thank you. Whoever's sharing. Thanks. Okay. Eleanor?
Yes, good morning. Thanks so much, John, and good to see everybody this morning. As John said, my name is Eleanor Michael, and I'm the Policy and Legislative Advisor at DIS, which means I head up both our legislative and our legal teams there. I will come to talk to you today about DIS's wish to enter into an enterprise agreement to procure cloud-based public records tracking and management software for purposes of the Freedom of Information Act on behalf of all state agencies, for purposes of having consistent and reliable system across all of our departments to organize, track, manage, and streamline our FOI workload. So today I just wanted to talk quickly about the background, why we're doing this, kind of the groundwork that we've done to assess the need for this type of software. Then I'll tell you a little bit about the product, describe the software and what it does, and then finally talk a little bit more about the rollout of the product and what the cost to the state would be. So the idea for procuring this product began with my own personal experience working for a variety of state agencies, including the governor's office, OPM, and DAS. In working in legal capacities in those 3 agencies, I saw in those agencies and other agencies statewide that we have sort of a patchwork quilt of methodologies for responding to Freedom of Information Act requests. A lot of times what agencies are doing is very basic Excel spreadsheet tracking of those Freedom of Information Act requests. For example, entering on an Excel spreadsheet who the FOI is assigned to, the date the FOI has been received, when that initial 4-day letter is provided, when responsive documents are turned over, and so on and so forth. However, the ability to maintain these types of tracking Excel spreadsheets varies widely by agencies. FOIs are handled in different departments and agencies. In some agencies, they're handled in legal. In some agencies, they have separate FOI staff. But more often than not, those divisions do not have administrative help to help maintain those tracking mechanisms. And they can often go by the wayside when folks get busy with a variety of duties. And the inability to track and keep a log of what is happening with FOIs can be really detrimental to those state agencies, particularly if they're called to testify before the Freedom of Information Commission. They need to show that they are doing their due diligence and utilize an Excel spreadsheet to track compliance, as well as following up with individuals via email. Can be very hard to kind of show consistency and that you're doing all that you can to produce documents in a timely manner. On some larger cases, agencies are using systems such as CasePoint, Everlaw, or Westlaw to assist with these searches, but none of those softwares are particularly cater towards FOI management in particular. Those more often than not are used for litigation purposes. And also the way the contracts are currently constructed, agencies, for example, in the case of CasePoint, would have to pay on a case-by-case basis. So you have to kind of do that analysis as to whether or not you want to make that financial investment. It's not something that you just have at the ready when an FOI comes in through the door. So I shared my experience with some of the other agency legal directors and found that they were having similar concerns as well. So we started kind of talking about what we could do to address this concern. And the reason we want to go forward with this procurement is basic transparency and good government, to be transparent and make sure that the public and the press have access to these public records. Compliance with the Freedom of Information Act will, and procurement of this software will help us reduce the amount of time that agencies spend on compliance, freeing up staff to do other important agency work, allow us to respond to these records requests in a more timely manner, reduce the number of complaints that are filed against agencies at the commission. In addition, reduce the amount of negative press agencies are getting for failure to respond in a timely manner, as well as reduce the number of audit findings. So there will be a lot of benefits from having a more streamlined process on this front. In addition, another reason that this procurement is really important is that the number of Freedom of Information Act requests that agencies are receiving is increasing both in number and in complexity. For example, the types of files that we're asking to produce now are diverse. Of course, we have documents, we have emails. With the rollout of Office 365, we have Teams messages and everything that comes along with the Teams suite. In addition, video files, images, those are all the types of things that are requested through FOIs, making responses increasingly complex. And just one example of the type of complexity of requests that we received, I can say from personal experience, DAS recently received a request for every website ever visited by every state-owned computer on state property. Again, that's the type of request we certainly would give pushback for, but our ability to track kind of the pushback that we gave, the response that was given, any coordination with other agencies on that type of super broad request in a software document, software product would be very helpful. In addition, there have been exposed through the pandemic some sort of flaws in the system. Having an online software would be very well suited to a remote work environment. And it also would really help FOI compliance more seamless if and when staff are transferring between agencies. So currently in an agency, you might have a staff member who is in charge of an FOI request, is reaching out to other staff members to try to get responsive documents. And then if that staff member leaves, the other folks who are remaining are a bit in the lurch. They would have to access that individual's email to kind of see what work they had done. There's no centralized tracking system for them to simply just pick up where they left off. So it would be really helpful in those types of circumstances. So in addition to sort of having these general conversation with state agency legal directors, I conducted a survey that I distributed to agency PIOs, legislative liaisons, and legal staff, as well as to constitutional officers, and even had a conversation with the Freedom of Information Commission themselves to assess interest in this type of software. We received responses from 28 agencies. The majority of them expressed interest in the software, including agencies such as, of course, DAS, Agriculture, SDE, State Police, Governor's Office, the AG's Office, DCF, DCP, DOC, DCJ, DDS, Early Childhood, Economic and Community Development, DEEP, Insurance, DMV, and DPH. In particular, I just wanted to share that the state police, emergency services of public protection, and DPH were in particular very strong in their advocacy for this project and this product. DESP, it's worth noting, receives approximately 50,000 requests per year. So you can imagine the challenges they have with tracking those requests. And DPH on their part has seen a huge increase in requests during the pandemic and is very eager to get this type of software solution. In addition, DAS is very interested in procuring this product because we have an increased coordination role with other agencies as it relates to HR centralization and IT optimization. So an online cloud-based FOI management system would really help ease our coordination with other state agencies on FOI requests. So now that I've laid out sort of the case for why we're interested in this, I just want to talk a little bit more about the product in particular. Like I said, it's a cloud-based FOI document management and tracking system. And it has two main features. It has a public-facing portal and then sort of a back office portal. Now, this is highly customizable, and there could be a conversation about how we would want to set it up if and when we were to procure this document. But just to describe what the public-facing portal would look like, it would be a website where requesters could log in and create a username and password, and they could request documents through the portal itself. Now, those documents could come in through the portal, but they could still just as easily place an FOI request through an email, through a phone call, through an in-person interaction. They wouldn't have to go through the portal, but that would be an option. Through the portal, the requesters can communicate with the agency about the request. They can view the status of the request. They can view invoices if payment is requested. And most importantly, they can download responsive files. The cloud-based portal has no size limitations. It's a lot more secure than transferring email, documents over email. And it creates an audit trail, which is really key for state agency lawyers and those responding to FOI requests. The audit trail is key when we go before the commission for us to be able to demonstrate, again, that due diligence that we've done when we followed up with a requester, who we asked for responsive documents, how much time we spent working on the request. All of those things are very useful in showing the commission that we've done our due diligence and we have been diligently working on the request since it was received. In addition, agency staff will know when files are being viewed and downloaded. So the minute a requester is looking at something that you have shared, you will know that it is being viewed. And then again, everything that is happening on one request is happening in one application. So ease of transferability between staff when there's staff turnover is key here as well. And again, fully customizable. In terms of the back office portal, FOI workflow tracking is really one of the most attractive features of this product. So if I were to receive an FOI request today, I could delegate that request to any members of our agency that I think might have responsive documents. And within the portal, they could indicate yes or no if they had responsive documents, and they could upload their documents within that system as well. Once I receive those documents, I can go in there, I can automatically extract PST email files, maintaining their original folder structure and automatically deduplicate them within the system. I can also review and redact those documents within GovQA, which is the product we're considering here. So although the Freedom of Information Commission does not require a privilege log like you might have required within litigation, you can go through, and when you're redacting those documents, indicate which section of the Freedom of Information Act you are redacting that under, so that for future reference, you will have that file, that record for yourself. And also, if those documents are similarly being used in a parallel litigation, you can be consistent between documents that are being produced in discovery and documents that are being produced through the Freedom of Information Act. So that's really key for agency attorneys to have that ability. In addition, communication with requesters can be done through this system. You can set up boilerplate messages. Again, consistency is key here, and automatic reminders to do follow-ups when you haven't heard back from folks on document requests. Another really important point I want to make is that through using this system, we're not creating new emails. And that's one of the risks that we run into now through the current system that a lot of agencies utilize, is every time we send an email to somebody asking them if they have responsive documents, we send a follow-up, we're creating new documents that can be FOI'd, and that just kind of exacerbates the problem. So in this instance, using this software, we would not be creating new public records all the time. In terms of security, storage, and support, the files would be maintained in the system for as long as our document retention system calls for, so we can customize that. It's hosted in the Microsoft Azure Government Cloud, which I understand is one of the most secure cloud platforms available that the state of Connecticut already uses. The system is CJIS and HIPAA compliant, and there is support for individual users once the product has been launched by phone. And again, like I said, it's important to note the product is highly customizable. So agencies can opt in or opt out depending on whether or not they want to participate. And the rollout of this product could be customized, whether we wanted to start out with a few agencies or all those that are willing. Of course, it could be mandated down the road if that's the direction the administration wanted to go, but that certainly wouldn't have to happen. Just to talk a little bit about the rollout and the cost, we anticipate it will take approximately 1 year to roll out the product. The cost is approximately $400,000 a year, which would be annual ongoing basis general fund cost. We included in our proposal approximately $150,000 for a project manager to oversee the rollout. So that person would be tasked with working with a designated lead from each state agency to oversee the rollout of this platform in each agency and make sure everybody is coming along and getting the product in place. That individual lead for each state agency would work with the vendor to customize the product for their agency's purposes. So finally, I just wanted to talk a little bit about context for this product. Others that currently use it include state agencies in other states, cities, counties, and university systems. In Connecticut, the cities of Hartford, Waterbury, and Bridgeport currently use it. I'm not aware of any other quote unquote full states that use it or have procured it at this enterprise level for the entire state. However, as a small state, and I know there are certain agencies that have pursued potentially doing this on an agency by agency basis, it seems to make sense for us to do it at a statewide level rather than to try to do it at a one-off agency by agency level. So that concludes my presentation for today. Thank you so much for considering this proposal, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you, Eleanor. Any questions, comments, or feedback from the committee?
John, this is Mark. To me, this is somewhat of an artifact of our world becoming more digital, and the sort of kinds of requests that we got in the past, and the ease of which that they came in, and our ability to fulfill them were very different when most of the records were on paper. And the more that we put online, and the more that we make that sort of accessible to people, the more the opportunity is for people to ask about it. And I love that this follows the deep presentation around the making our information more transparent to people as a government for the things that we do have. That's a tremendous assistance, for demonstrating how we run a really complex enterprise. But this, in many ways represents a new, the addition of something new that we have to do at scale, based on the volume that continues to increase in this area. And I don't know how we continue to do the work that we do have with the same or slightly less resources, as has happened over the last several years, without sort of investing in some of these more automated technologies. And the question is, how do we make sure that the agencies use it? And I know you talked a little bit about a couple agencies that had requested or had looked into these solutions. Do you have an idea of what the pull looks like from agencies? Like we have, 50, 60% that are ready to go tomorrow if we can make this available to them.
Sure. So, Mark, are you asking sort of how many agencies are ready at this time?
Now, how many agencies indicated that they would, if they had something, that they would participate in this kind of solution? Like they're ready to have something today.
I would say approximately 20.
And sorry, to piggyback off of Mark's comment, do you know how many FOIs each of those agencies get a year?
Yes, that was a part of the survey that we conducted. I have a spreadsheet that indicates sort of in sort of different tranches, different ranges, how many FOIs they receive. I'd be happy to share that with you, Kim.
Thank you. So when you use the word customization, I always get a little antsy about customization because everybody looks at customization. This is my lack of IT, but just enough to be dangerous. And that is, I always heard customization is not good. I know we did this in higher education when I was there, and we had to strip back customization because customizations were really based on the agency rather than changing the process. And so I know that IT software has moved to configuration, not customization. So if this is a customization and each one is going to create their own, then we don't have a unified process. So I just would want to be careful of that.
Yes, absolutely. I definitely hear your point there. It's a point well taken. I think there are going to be a number of decision points for the administration to make if and when the decision is made to procure this software. And one of them would be the extent to which we want to mandate state agencies to use this, or the extent to which we want them to opt in on their own. And I think another major decision point would be, as I mentioned, the public-facing portal. So do we want to have the public-facing portal, or do we not want to have the public-facing portal? And if we have a public-facing portal, will it be one portal for each state agency? So on the DAS website, you submit DAS requests. On the OPM website, you submit OPM requests. Or is it a larger website for the entire state of Connecticut that says submit your FOI request for any state agency here, and then it branches out from there? So those are all things that we'll have to talk through with the team if we decide to move forward with this.
And then one other question. You mentioned the name of the software. So have you already done an RFP?
Yes, this is a vendor that we already have on contract.
Oh, we do. And they do this type of work already?
Yes.
At what agency?
They already do this type of work. They are not currently working in any state agencies that I'm aware of.
So they're doing other work.
Right. I guess what I should say is they are available through a variety of our existing contracting measures. There would not be a need to do an RFP in this instance.
However, how do we know that that's the best vendor for us for this product?
So we have looked at a variety of different vendors. And we have spoken with agencies that have looked at a variety of different vendors. This one does seem to be the vendor that checks most of the boxes that we currently are looking to check. And also, I think the speed with which we could implement it is also a key decision-making point at this point in time. This is something that I know from the perspective of as I mentioned, the governor's office, emergency services and public protection, and DPH, they're really looking to put this into place expeditiously. And so I think the speed with which we can implement is also a key consideration.
Are there any further questions or comments?
I wonder if the committee will indulge me. This is Doug Delina, the governor's deputy general counsel. First of all, I want to thank Eleanor for the tremendous amount of work she's done, and Mark Raymond and John, and the other folks that have been involved in kind of getting us to this point. I will kind of reiterate that this is a priority for OTG legal, for not just for us to have for OTG, but for agencies to have a tool that they do not have right now. You asked a question about customization versus configuration. I think the key thing to understand right now is there is neither, because there is no standardization. And a product like this will offer that. And we, from a litigation defense, from an FOI defense perspective, and from a transparency perspective, we really need that standardization. What that will also offer is an alternative to, I think, a really risky process that we're using now. The vast majority of agencies, in order to do document review for FOI purposes, but even for litigation management purposes, they're using the document review software they're using now is called Outlook. And it's not document review software. And it creates a lot of risks and adds a lot of resource demands to the process. So, for example, if legal in an agency is running the FOI and doc review process, if you want to assign to a junior attorney or an attorney or an intern that you've trained on the FOI law and FOI review process, that's great if that person can finish it in a short time. But if it's going to be assigned, say, near the end of the semester, or if that person moves on, they're doing that review in Outlook because there is no other option for the most part. If they leave, if somebody goes out on medical leave or something, it's in their Outlook account. And so the other attorneys or the other staffers that have a role or might need to be assigned to pick up that work or supervise that work or review it don't have access to that. And so there's a lot of friction, not only in that delegation and review of others' work process, but also then when you get it to the legal team or the doc review staff, transferring it over and giving access to agency leadership or the press team to see what's going to be going out, you kind of have to do some kind of a workaround with existing software that you have and patch together, and you come up with your own process over lots and lots of hours of trial and error. And you don't really have a way to document that. So it creates a lot of litigation risk, it creates a lot of friction, and it just takes so much more time and resources than it should. The alternative that we have right now is, as Eleanor said, litigation management software for document review. And that is great when you have hundreds or thousands of documents, because the major capabilities that provides are worth a lot of the time on the front end that you spend learning how to use the software and uploading the documents and interacting with the vendor staff to get that review set up. But with the product that DAS has looked at, it's really made for document review, as Eleanor said before. And what that means is some of these more modest document reviews, you can get into the review as an individual staffer or as an agency a lot faster. That saves a ton of time because it's more intuitive and there are less kind of technical steps and technical assistance needed. So somebody's got a lower level of training can get into that review a lot faster and get it done. And what that does is increases the reputation for transparency, and it, in my mind, stops the unforced errors of delays that were unnecessary because there was so much front-end work that was involved just to start reviewing the documents. So, you know, that was one of the big points I wanted to make. We've really got to get out of what most agencies are doing, and that's using Outlook, because of a lot of the problems and limitations that has. I did want to point out that this is not limited just to emails. Any kind of documents that can be digitized can be uploaded to this software. And so anything that the custodians of particular documents have and they provide to the person managing the review can be uploaded to the system and reviewed and tracked. So again, from a legal perspective, litigation and compliance perspective, the general counsel, I know this is a very high priority of hers for us dealing with the increased request to OTG, but I think for managing the process and standardizing it across the executive branch. So thanks for the time, and appreciate that you'll listen some more because Eleanor really covered a lot of it. But I thought those were important points to reinforce. So thanks.
Thank you, Doug. I think that was very helpful. There are no other further comments or feedback. Can I get a motion?
John, it's Dennis. I'll make a motion to approve.
Thank you, Dennis.
This is Beth.
Thank you, Beth. All in favor? Megan, aye.
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 Aye. Any opposed? Motion, project passes. Thank you very much. Eleanor, Doug, thank you.
Thanks a lot.
Thanks to everybody.
Okay, moving right along here. The next order of business is item number 6 on the agenda, is the Department of Labor PFML FMLA Appeals Management System, and I believe we have the commissioner with us today.
Hi, folks.
Hello,
Thanks
Commissioner.
very much. Hi, nice to see you all here today. So first I want to just mention that I have with me Andrea Reeves Barton as a partner in this project with us from the Connecticut Paid Leave Authority. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Dante Bartolomeo with Connecticut Department of Labor. I also have my team of Mauro Carducci, who's our IT director, Eric Lindquist, who's an expert, many of you know, in the IT realm, who's a consultant with us, and Stephen Danahy. Also Heidi Lane, who's our legal director. The FML, Family Medical Leave Expansion, is under her realm. Susan Garcia Nofi, who heads up our appeals, referee, lower authority, and our higher authority board of reviews, and Chris Levine, who's our CFO. So first, this is a product, I guess, of Public Act 19-25, which created the paid family medical leave program, as well as expanded the unpaid family medical leave. So we'll do the PFML, paid family medical, the FML, family medical. It stood up the Connecticut Paid Family Leave Authority to administer the paid program, and it also directed our agency, Connecticut Department of Labor, to adjudicate appeals and take complaints for the FML, but on an expanded basis. So it basically went from the family medical leave program for any employer with 75 or more employees now to 1 or more employees. So it's a huge expansion of that. So Eric, if you could just move on those for me, or Stephen, I don't know who's doing that. But to do so effectively and efficiently, we need to secure a system to transfer records, because now we're going between the authority and we're also we'll expect greater volume for the regular unpaid family leave. I'll have to say that I was in an appropriations committee meeting yesterday, and I was chastised for using acronyms. So I'm trying really hard to say them all. But I think at this point, if it's okay with you, I'll go with FML and PFMLA. So we are. We're going to be using an existing Department of Labor Salesforce environment, which is what we built the Consumer Contact Center on for the pandemic level unemployment access to our customers for the unemployment insurance program. The integrated consumer portal with enterprise ForgeRock identity and access management is for the FML complaint or appeal system and the customer appealing for the paid family medical leave decisions. The employee portal, Microsoft Azure for identity and access management, is for the appeals and the legal staff for reviewing documents and for workflow. We need to deliver the essential base functions by in a very short time frame for December 20th. And then we'll have an iterative production for multiple releases to launch functionality as needed. We have a very tight time frame, authority needing access in December and Department of Labor in January. The cost avoidance is, I have to point out, really means that we would need to add this additional cost if we were not able to move forward with this program, because we don't have, if we don't have this automated system, we would need additional staffing for a manual system, and also other expenses for filing and postage and those types of costs. I want to point out that this is where we have flexible solution to facilitate enterprise appeals management. This could go beyond just Connecticut Department of Labor and the paid authority, paid family leave authority, and others would be able to reuse this application, and it does align with the governor's digital service vision. The costs for the 2.046 million, that's for the project, which is the MVP and the first year operating costs and enhancements through FY22, so through June 30th of 22. As far as beyond, for the, we have listed here the annual maintenance costs. I will point out that we currently have not determined a funding source for that, but we need to move forward with the most critical is the initial launching of this. Next slide. So this is just those of us within the two agencies who are the owners of this project, if you will. And the next. As far as any consideration, these are some questions that were asked during preliminary meetings. You know, we do consider the TPA automation, but it's not critical for the initial rollout of this at this point in time, but it is certainly a consideration. And as far as reporting, we've identified the data that will be collected initially and right from the start, but at this point in time, we haven't determined what that reporting method would look like yet. And as far as other considerations, as I mentioned, there's no funding mechanism determined yet beyond June 30th of 22. But I also say that we have yet to identify any needed enhancements beyond that point. We would expect if there were needed enhancements, it would come from, you know, future legislation or be identified as the system is being used. But right now, at this point in time, we don't have that. We really just need, under a very tight frame, to get this time frame to get this up and moving, so that when the authority is receiving their initial applications, and then if there's a need for appeal, that we are ready to follow that immediately. And as of January, beginning of January, we also have to have the ability to expand greatly the unpaid medical leave. So trying to be concise, but there may be questions. I've got a team here for you. I know I thought we were supposed to be real quick, and then I went through the others and I thought, oh no, we seem to be lacking, but hopefully we've covered the essential information here.
Thank you, Commissioner. Can I just ask one acronym question? You, in one of your latter slides, it referenced TPA. What does that stand for?
Third party administrator.
Okay, and that would be the authority?
That would be third party administrators for businesses and others when they were determining whether or not.
Will there be an integration from the authority in terms of the claims processing to Department of Labor? So when claims are denied, will that information be passed on to DOL as part of this project?
In order for the appeals, we do need that information, but I can ask maybe Eric Lindquist. Do you want to speak technically and more specifically to that?
Yeah, John, there won't be a direct interface between that data. It is once the decision is made at the authority, then it's upon the person who receives the denial to file the appeal and submit the documentation for that appeal.
Kim, I think you're
Sorry.
you're,
Yep, sorry. When they submit the appeal information, is that in a portal uploaded, or is it paper?
No, it will be all in a portal. So the customer
Electronic?
portal, yep, the customer portal will take the application and also the ability to upload that documentation, and then that documentation is available by the employee side to do the review, and any communications back and forth these would be through the application, as well as any interested parties that are part of the case would be able to see where the status of that appeal is in by having come in and create an ID and have authority and or security to view that case.
When you said there is no direct interface, John probably understood what you were talking about, but I did not. So did that mean that we have two separate systems?
There are two independent systems. One is for the appeals process and one is for the authority's application. And Andrea may want to, speak to that a little bit, but there are two independent full business processes.
Andrea, would you like?
Yeah, I'm happy to weigh in if you'd like to.
Thank you.
So the way that the process works is that once a decision has been made that a claim has been denied, and that would be done through our third-party administrator and then reviewed by us. And as Eric mentioned, the individual then has the right by statute to go to the Department of Labor and file their appeal. And they will do that individually, and they will be given all of the information that they need in order to be able to file that appeal. And then after, so with respect to the authority, we treat ourselves like every other employer. So there is not necessarily an interface between the authority and DOL. We believe that that line really needs to be quite firm because we want to really, how can I put this? We really want to maintain the integrity of that process. We don't want to ever be perceived as having our thumb on the scale when it comes to any of the work that the Department of Labor is doing in assessing the validity of a particular appeal. So that is why we don't have that integration built in. With that said, if, according, and the commissioner stated this very appropriately and clearly, if we find that in the future, as the system is being used, it's more efficient when a claimant wants to have their information just sent directly from AFLAC to the Department of Labor, that can be done in the second phase. But for the minimum viable product and the very tight time frame that we're on, that's not something we have time to build right now. But as an authority, we are really very careful about not inserting ourselves in that process because it's a right that belongs to the person whose claim has been denied. It does not belong to us.
If I might point out as well that to build off of what Andrea said, even our lower authority, which is the Board of Referee, and our higher authority, which is the Board of Review, that's quasi-judicial. So there's this kind of tenuous link between us and them as well. So Department of Labor, once something goes over to Susan's group, the referees or the Board of Review, we also have very limited ability to input or influence any of that decision making as well. So there's somewhat of a buffer there. It's a quasi judicial entity.
Thank you.
John, may I just add one more thing? And the other
Absolutely.
reason that, I'm sorry, so the other reason that we chose not to do that is that that AFLAC might at times be the arbiter of that decision. So again, for the purposes of making sure that we have that degree of independence, we left it the way that it was.
Thank you. Are there any questions from the committee or other comments or feedback? I know this is on quite a fast track. Well, can I get a motion to approve from someone on the committee?
This is Mark. Motion to approve.
Thank you, Mark. Can I get a second?
Second. Beth.
Thank you, Beth. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? No passes. Thank you very much.
Thank you. We appreciate you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Okay, our next order of business and final is item number 7 on the agenda from the Office of Workforce Strategy is the MyCT Workforce Platform. And Neil, I think we have you. You're up.
Thanks, everyone. I'm just going to pull up the slide deck and I will get started. I know we only have about 30 minutes left. Okay, can everyone see my screen?
Yes.
Great. So I'm going to try to go through these slides as quickly as possible to leave as much time for questions. But first of all, thank you for the opportunity to present today. Appreciate all of the pre-meeting advice and all of the just guidance in terms of preparing for this. So just wanted to give a shout out to the committee for helping us prepare adequately. But this project, I think, is really exciting, and one of the, just to kind of tee up the discussion, you know, our office, the Office of Workforce Strategy, is a relatively new office in state government. We are the staff to the Governor's Workforce Council, which is the state workforce board in Connecticut. Our role is to really help coordinate workforce development programs across the state of Connecticut. One of the, you know, when the strategic plan that was announced last year was released, one of the kind of core areas of research that we focused on was workforce development systems that exist across the state. And one of the kind of key findings that we discovered was that there are a lot of great systems, but they live with different agencies, different nonprofits, different entities that created sort of a fragmented user experience. So we convened a group, we called it the Online Services Working Group, to really discuss, I think, the overall experience that users were facing and to understand where we could improve upon that. And you see on the right-hand side here, we kind of came away with 3 discrete themes. One was kind of disconnectedness and lack of integration between these systems. 2 was sort of the usability and complexity of the systems. And 3 was kind of gaps in enrollment and training program data. With this in mind, we sort of discussed the development of a new system, not that would duplicate any of these existing systems that you have here, but really be focused on connecting all of them together so that a user has sort of a seamless experience. And I think one of the challenges, but also one of the opportunities of this program is that workforce is, our office likes to think of it as cradle to retirement. So there are there are a myriad of users that we really need to account for when thinking about what systems we want to connect within this jobs.ct.gov. So I'm not going to get into the details on this slide, but the general takeaway is there will be students accessing this system. There will be job seekers accessing this system. There will be employers, guidance counselors, a whole slew of individuals that we really want to make sure have tailored, customized tools that are really meant to address their specific needs. And like I mentioned before, I think a consistent theme that hopefully will ring throughout our presentation is that a lot of these tools already exist. And the goal of this system is not to duplicate those tools, but rather to help drive traffic to those tools and connect those tools through a broader kind of customer journey. And this has been modeled off of several states, Colorado, Virginia, Indiana, that have done similar sort of user journeys that have really helped drive the user experience for these individuals who, by the way, a lot of them do not have a lot of technical proficiency. So making sure that the systems are intuitive, easy to use is beyond critical. One of the questions I know the committee had was, how does this tie into the broader strategy of the Governor's Workforce Council? There are 4 pillars of the Governor's Workforce Council. I will not get into the details for this call given the time constraints, but one of the 4 pillars is around data and accountability. And the signature initiative of that committee is to focus on developing this platform. You'll notice if you've read the strategic plan, section 4.1 stipulates that there would be the development of an online workforce system. And this is exactly the type of program that we envisioned when we were developing that section. So this is very related to the overall system or the overall strategic plan that we published, and in fact represents one of the signature initiatives that really encompass that plan. And I'm happy to talk more about the overall strategic plan and some of the initiatives that fall within that. So what do we mean when we say this is going to connect people, connect users through different services? I think there are kind of 3 main themes to this overall tool. One of them, which I think I alluded to earlier, is kind of a hub and spoke model. There's all of these different systems that exist today, and this jobs.ct.gov really would be central in terms of coordinating those systems and making sure that it serves as really kind of the connective tissue that brings all of those together under one umbrella. And we'll talk more about kind of that umbrella later. So when we say hub and spoke, this is really meant to connect services that would be provided to students, such as career exploration tools. We are working with the Office of Higher Education to develop what's called a Credential Registry that will contain all of the post-secondary and secondary credentials that are offered in Connecticut. That's a perfect example of a tool that we would want integrated within this overall system so that individuals are actually being routed to it and it's being effectively utilized. Personalized services. I heard Kim's comment about customization earlier, and I totally agree. Sometimes that can be sort of a buzzword with technology, but one of the things that we've heard time and time again from this online services working group that we convened, which by the way consists of state agency partners, our community college system, our independent colleges, the University of Connecticut, individual nonprofits that provide workforce services, and companies themselves. Indeed, for example, sits on that committee. One of the things we've heard time and time again is that there really needs to be a sort of seamless, tailored list of services that are generated based on each and individual user. And I'll get more into that on the next slide, but we're really focused on based off of the needs of these different users, whether it's a student or a job seeker, they get a really clear understanding of what is the step-by-step process that you need to follow through to make sure that your needs are being met. And then lastly, on career pathways, one of the things we noticed, and this again ties to what we're working on with the Office of Higher Ed, is that there can be more done today to provide a robust explanation to students about what current educational and training programs exist in Connecticut. We know that the Office of Higher Ed currently maintains an inventory. So think of the registry that I mentioned before as sort of an extension of that. And note that that is a separate project. It is not embedded in the costs of this program at all. We're treating that separately, but it is a very central component of something that would be included in this program. And that really includes all of the educational programs that exist in Connecticut and really clearly outlines what they cost, what are the educational requirements, does this align with students' career goals and ambitions? So really tries, the overall goal of that, career pathways and career exploration, is just to give the students as much information as possible so they can really make educated decisions about what training programs or degree programs they'd like to enroll in. So based off of all this feedback and this overall vision, we've been working in direct partnership with the digital services team at the Department of Administrative Services to release an RFP that includes the build of an MVP with certain core features to it. So the MVP would kind of consist of three core features, and then the final product would include some additional features that we think would also be central. But just for time purposes, the core features would be, ensuring that this aligns with the MyCT overall vision from the governor and the Department of Administrative Services, ensuring that there is a survey tool that every user has access to that would essentially outline their needs. So it would be a series of questions that would directly translate into, here is the step-by-step process that I would need to take to ensure that my goals and objectives are being met. This is very consistent with other service categories of the MyCT vision, where a very clear checklist is sort of generated to help a user through their journey. And then a career exploration tool, as I mentioned before. This is really central to our vision, not only from the Governor's Workforce Council and the Office of Workforce Strategy, but also in terms of a kind of clear technological vision where we can seamlessly show students and job seekers, based off your interests. Let's say you really want to go into software development. Here are the different software development programs that exist in Connecticut, and here is exactly the type of requirements that you would need to enroll in those programs from a cost, skills, et cetera, standpoint. So I'm not going to get into the details of this slide, but this talks about some of the services that would be included. And again, these are already provided. So like, filing for unemployment insurance, that is clearly within the Department of Labor. But let's say someone, loses their job, they don't know where to go. They would get routed to the jobs.ct.gov. And they would, fill out a needs assessment, and it would kind of generate the checklist saying you need to file for unemployment, you need to explore training programs, you need to, enroll in training programs, get health insurance. So again, all of these services are kind of being provided already, but this system would kind of, again, generate that clear checklist that would outline the step-by-steps of where that individual needs to go. And it would, in this case, it would route them directly to the Department of Labor website where they can enroll for unemployment insurance. So again, just really that connective tissue to make sure that services are being provided. And again, you'll see on this slide that there's a bunch of other users that we really need to account for. So hopping ahead, this will directly support the signature kind of initiative from the Office of Workforce Strategy, which we are calling Career Connect. This has not been launched yet, and we are still working with the Office of Policy and Management and other agencies to ensure that this gets implemented and kicked off as soon as possible. But the goal of that program is to fund training programs across the state. So this platform, again, would route individuals to those training programs that would be funded by our office. So there's this kind of a seamless journey of if someone loses their job or someone is currently on unemployment insurance, there is a clear integration between the CT hire system at the Department of Labor, where they would be able to explore all of the training programs that exist, and their tuition would be covered by our office. So a really great example of kind of interagency collaboration, where we will provide funding for individuals to enroll in those training programs, and those individuals will be kind of seamlessly able to explore the different programs that exist in Connecticut for them. And I'm going to pause here and turn it over to Max Gagel from the digital services team to just go over sort of how this fits into the broader MyCT vision that the governor and the digital services team is currently implementing today.
Absolutely. Thanks, Niall. Just for time's sake, our team has been working with Niall and team to ensure that this expands the governor's vision for the MyCT platform and a one-stop experience for all end users of state services. This wraps into a plan of building out service categories such as business.ct.gov or health.ct.gov. And jobs we feel is a pretty critical component of MyCT and its expansion. The tool and the platform will be using the architecture that's already been built for business.ct.gov, and that's being expanded with the additional capabilities in phase 2 projects. And we're excited to work with their team.
Thanks, Max. Just for time's sake, Max, maybe I'm going to skip over the next 2 slides. I know we're running up on time, but Max is here to answer any questions that the committee may have on any of the technical components. But Max, thank you for that. I'm going to skip over these next 2 slides. I know, one of the, just to kind of reinforce how this will work, kind of from a process flow perspective, a user would create an account on jobs.ct.gov. They would complete sort of a survey on their needs, and then jobs.ct.gov would route them to the specific services that they would be offered. So, Department of Labor for accessing their unemployment benefits, CT hires for matching them with an existing training program, Career Connect, which is the program from the Office of Workforce Strategy that would actually allow them to receive eligible funding for those programs, and other Connecticut state services like healthcare or social service support, things of that nature. So happy to answer more questions on that, but just for time's sake, I'm going to keep going through this. So the project is projected to cost $1.8 million initially for the development of an MVP. This would last about 6 months, like Max alluded to and I alluded to earlier. We've gone through an RFP process in collaboration with the digital services team, leveraging 4 existing vendors that the state has worked with previously. So this is an extension of an existing contract. We feel really good about the proposals that we received. We have fully vetted each and every one of them in collaboration with not only the digital services team, but also the Department of Labor. We've had 2 reviewers from their team review, and other individuals that were sort of key partners along the way. So this proposal would fund the initial build of the MVP, and then would cover additional 2 releases, which are not covered in the initial 1.8 that the vendor has quoted us for, but that would be additional costs that would be covered down the line, and ongoing licensing costs, which I will get to in a second, because I know that was a question that the committee had. So just know that the Office of Workforce Strategy, we are currently interviewing candidates for a project manager role. We are a very small team of 3 people, so we do not have the capacity to take this on currently. Myself as chief of staff has been sort of interfacing as been the lead for this project, but we are in the process of interviewing other candidates to come on full time so that there is adequate support to drive this project forward. And we have, I believe, 4 interviews in the next 10 days for individuals to start that process. So we're really excited to bring someone on full time there. Post-implementation, I know this was a question from the committee. Our office will be covering those costs. We do have a series of, I think, opportunities to leverage to cover the ongoing licensing costs. One of which we do have from the 2021 legislative session, a 40 million bonding authorization, which again has not gone through the bonding commission yet, so we do not have access to those funds. But the goal eventually will be for us to have access to those funds that we would be able to use to cover the licensing cost associated with this and any ongoing cost in the short term. So we feel confident that in addition to the overall ask from this committee, that we are well positioned through that additional bonding request to cover any additional costs and ongoing costs that would be associated with the development of this. And I'm happy to talk more about that later. And then just finally, just in terms of ongoing responsibilities between our office and the Department of Administrative Services on the digital services side, our team will leverage, our team being the Office of Workforce Strategy, would leverage, would kind of work to support the continuous improvement of jobs.ct.gov based on our ongoing work with workforce stakeholders. So we would get direct feedback from them on, this is something that's working really well. This is something that's not working well. And we would work with the digital services team to kind of make technical enhancements based off the feedback that we're hearing from the front line. The conduit to receive that feedback is this, what I mentioned before, this online services working group. And we will make sure that we are kind of soliciting feedback from them on an ongoing basis so that that feedback is getting directly translated into technical enhancements that would be managed by the Department of Administrative Services. So there are a few more slides that I'm not going to show because I know I am over time, but I am happy to answer any additional questions from the committee and or add any clarifying points of emphasis that can be helpful to the committee. But I want to just, again, say thank you for the opportunity to present today and looking forward to kind of working with you all going forward.
Thank you, Niall, and also Max for helping today. I do have one clarifying question for you, Niall. So the 2 or 3 slides back, you referenced this, the MVP being a cost of 1.8, I think, but the ask of the committee in full disclosure is really over 4 million, right? So it's 4.5 million for the total project cost is what's being asked today, correct?
That is correct.
Okay.
The delta between those two numbers is to account for the additional releases of the technology after the vendor has completed the MVP release.
Understood. So you've further broken that out into discrete parts of the project to show the MVP being roughly 1 point, I think you said 8, but correct. For the committee's discussion and vote today, it's really on the full 4.6 or that's 5. Correct. Yeah. Okay. Comments? Feedback?
I have a quick question on, you mentioned some $40 million bond authorization. What's that targeted for?
So that bonding authorization right now is meant to support our office, the Office of Workforce Strategy, and the Governor's Workforce Council. Right now, we are still determining the full slew of needs that would be addressed with that money. But I will say there are sort of a few key themes that I would emphasize at this point, one of which is supporting individuals accessing training opportunities is a central theme of those funds. And we view the ongoing maintenance of this tool as kind of a key feature to ensure that individuals have access to training programs from a kind of, again, user journey perspective. Another kind of key area for that bonding authorization would be focused on providing supportive services to individuals enrolling into job training programs. We've seen time and time again that individuals don't have access to childcare, transportation, kind of central things that they need to ensure that they're completing these programs. So we're working right now to kind of fully flesh out the full intent and usage of those funds. But we do want to prioritize this particular initiative within that 40 million to ensure that there's kind of continuity post the 4.8 million or 4.2 or 3 million that we have here to ensure that the ongoing costs to maintaining this system are accounted for.
Thank you.
Another question for, I guess, more for the group or the committee is, so could this be considered an extension of work that the digital team has already undertaken with, roughly $45 million worth of allocation and shifting priorities, or should this be handled as a separate and discrete project/investment?
Yeah, John, I'll take an initial shot at that. And we have had some discussion, and our digital phase 2 investment had come before this group and got approved to move forward. That did not include this as sort of a scoped out area. And over the last several months, it's emerged as sort of a need. We do have the ability, if we're looking at sort of the funds associated with the program, to potentially add this into that previous allocation with the downsizing or potential removal of some of the other things that we had committed to there. And so, we can't just add it into the existing approved work without having some kind of impact in the roughly for service areas. Now that $5 million number is about what we had been estimating for each one of the areas. So it would have a significant impact on, something like taxes or education or some other area that we had identified. And so I see us having as a committee a couple of options on this. One is to have that added in with the full transparency that we would either downsize some other efforts or need to come back to this committee to deliver the full work that we approved previously, or we can move this forward as its own separate item, obviously in close conjunction with the digital team. So I think if we sort of approve the merits of what it is that we're asking for this, we can talk about how we as a committee want to handle the mechanics of funding.
Yeah, I'm surprised that it wasn't already included in the original bonding of the 40 million that's already been slotted for workforce strategy.
So Kim, I could take that. The 40 million bonding that was authorized from this session was not specific to IT capital for technical or technology builds per se. There was a separate sort of discussion about a discrete line item that would go to support any technological investments. The 40 million was the intent of that fund would be to go towards the actual providing of services and tuition services, supportive services to get people back to work through job training programs, less so on the technology side. So that funding really was meant to go towards straight to the job seeker themselves so that they can enroll in programs, given, we still have 130,000 people out of work in Connecticut today. So we want to make sure we're really maximizing that money to go straight to the job seeker themselves. But that being said, we do want to use a sliver of that to help pay for some of the ongoing costs that would be associated with this, given there's going to be ongoing licensing fees that our office is going to need to account for. So we're trying to maximize and braid both of those funding sources together.
And again, one more question. As you mentioned that the initial ask is what, 1.8? So it sounds to me like this is a phased-in project. Then why not take a phased-in approach?
So my initial response to that, and I would, if Max wants to weigh in here, welcome him too. But The initial 1.8 will cover the MVP build for the first 6 months. That's the end product of that 1.8. Given that there are, and I sort of breezed through this in the presentation, I should have spent more time on it, but there are kind of central features that are not included in that MVP. We wanted to get a product out as quickly as possible to ensure that like I said, 130,000 job seekers out there have a system that they could utilize as soon as possible. However, there are key features such as kind of a chatbot integration, ongoing sort of technical enhancements, things like that we really view as a central piece to this that would kind of immediately need to get funded. So that's where those additional releases come in. And I think, we have ample opportunity to use the additional funds baked in, which were basically 1 million per additional release to help, integrate, like I said, the chatbot, multilingual support, an authentication system for users, and an expanded set of services that would be included in the portal. So we're going to try to get as much baked into the first 6 months as possible. But this is, as I mentioned before, a pretty comprehensive system given all the users that would be included. And we want to make sure that we're kind of layering on as quickly as possible post those 6 months. So that's where those additional 2 releases come in, which we've quoted at about $1 million each based off of additional or previous experience from the digital services team on incorporating additional releases into their proposals.
One more question. Mark, this is for you. I thought that in the 45 million, we had a chat box software included in there. So is this the same product that it's getting a piggyback off of? Oh, you're on mute.
Yeah, absolutely. The capability that we have in the digital phase 2 is growing out. What we have is chatbot, making it multilingual so that we can plug in different data sources. This investment is not to create up something new or separate, but it's to get the content of these areas integrated into that same chatbot.
You have an estimate of 50,000 users, Salesforce license, additional licenses that are necessary. How'd you come up with that value, that number?
I will jump in first, but I will defer to the Max and the digital services team on this one slightly. But this was based off of, I think, previous service categories that were implemented on MyCT based on the fact that Salesforce is the broader architecture that was used there. We came up with an estimate based off of previous iterations of the program. So that was how we came up with those assumptions that drove the costs.
Additionally, we've been trying to develop a model that takes into account end users' usage of multiple service categories, and that there will be a declining, I guess, usage between those service categories based as more service categories are stood up.
Okay, thank you.
Are there any other questions or comments on the need for this and the concept behind what's being proposed before we talk a little bit more about the financing? That's no. Mark, do you have a recommendation for the committee, not to put you on the spot, but being, sort of overseeing all the digital work, in terms of whether it's best to absorb this as part of the initial project, knowing that this scope wasn't included in the initial part of the 50 million. And eventually we would need to go back and backfill that.
Yeah. So, my suggestion for moving this forward is to approve the project into the portfolio. But that perhaps from a cash flow perspective, that we don't seek funding, direct funding for it, and we use some of the funding that we have at this point, to, until we, take what's already been authorized and put that into use. But that as a group, know that we've sort of approved this for funding. So to add to that overall digital portfolio, just we don't need the cash to do it, given what we already have.
Mark, I like that approach. I really feel comfortable with that. Also because it's also piggybacking off of some of the existing technology that you're going to use. And then should you need it later on, then we just put it forward. I like the fact that we're not going to bond for this if, it doesn't end up that it's $5 million and, some of it can already be shared with the work that the good work that you're already doing.
Yeah, and I do expect to come back at some point in the future, but I'd rather have
Sure.
done that with the full, cognizance of this committee in terms of what it is that we're doing, and the addition of that of this particular need into, what we're doing with digital. And if we have to come back and talk about cash flow, next year, then at least it will be on the record having done so.
Mark, I think you actually just made a motion a minute ago and just not using those words. So if we can have an official motion here, maybe we can vote on that. That would make sense.
Okay. So I will make a motion to approve the addition of I'm searching for the words here. I want to make sure I get it right. The Office of Workforce Strategy for MyCT Workforce to approve the project and to add the funding to the digital phase 2 program, which will be sought, at some point in the future, but using the existing funds that have been previously approved for the digital program.
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Passes.
Team, thank you very much for the opportunity
you,
to present
Noel.
again today. We really appreciate the partnership with all of the agencies that we've worked with and really look forward to getting this off the ground. We think this is going to be a great program, so thank you again.
Niall, I want to compliment you on a great job today. I knew from our first initial meeting, this has taken a really good turn and a good light years ahead in your presentation of this today. So great job.
Thanks, Kim.
Jen, one question for you or Kim, perhaps. Just, I know previously in some of our meetings we had a readout of where we are fiscally with the program. Sort of what we've committed to, what we have left, what it looks like. I didn't notice that in the materials for today's meeting, but is that something that we can get over the next month or two?
Yeah, I can send something out, and I'll be honest, Mark, with the agenda being as full as it was, there were a couple of items that we didn't put on for today, more administrative. But
fully respect that, and thank you.
Thank you. No, this took multiple meetings just to get to this on some of the projects, as you know.
So we did leave some of the administrative things off of today, including introductions. So hopefully everyone knows everyone by now. But thank you very much, and we'll be sure to get that out to the group as well.
Thanks, John.
All right.
Thank you all.
Officially, the meeting is completed. 12:05. Jim, you can stop the recording, and thank you, everyone.
Adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
So move. Kim.
Thank you, Kim.
You bet.
All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Ready?
All right.
Thank you, John.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thanks, folks.
Thank you.
Bye.